Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to the Revolving Change podcast. If you're new here, Revolving Change is all about navigating leadership and management and making lasting, measurable change in this ever evolving world. Here with you today is me, of course. My name is Joanna. I'm a junior coach here at Revolving Change. And of course, here with us today is our founder, Mr. Jorge Loebl. Sir Jorge.
AKA the analog dinosaur.
Yes, he is the
I'll use
dinosaur
three fingers like dinosaurs do.
dinosaur that keeps still going. Today we are going to talk about a very, very special topic. It is called perception management.
One of my favorites. I love perception management.
Even the word perception in itself is it's such a concept because I went into the rabbit hole of really learning what that word means in itself. And some people would say that reality in relation to perception is an illusion because everyone's perception of anyone or anything is different. So it's really
That's why
different.
they say it's so important. Perception is reality.
Yes.
My perception is my reality, regardless whether you will agree, or you
Mhm.
will support, or you will be in agreement.
Mhm.
My perception is my reality. What I perceive is what is true to me.
Yeah,
And of course, it's abused by many people, right? Pretending and then it's not. But
yeah,
that's another topic.
I came across this video about perception. I think it was one of the reliable. I think it was Big Thing. They were like, perception only becomes reality when two people agree on the same thing. They perceive the same thing and it becomes reality. Of course, I'm not saying that it is true or I fully agree with that, but I guess that's when perception is becomes true to reality is when two people agree on the same thing. Is another rabbit hole that is very difficult to go
Yeah,
into.
it's a rabbit hole that I don't want to go into because
I heard you.
yeah, it's because again, I'm Daltonian. There are some colors I don't recognize very well, and I remember when my children, when they were little. Now it's maybe my grandchildren. They used to tease me like, "What color is this, Daddy? What color is this?" Because they knew I was gonna say it wrong. Of course, at the end, even if I would tease them and I would say, black is white, but I'm not Daltonian that bad. But
Oh,
I'm Daltonian in some ranges of brown and red. So
mm,
there, I miss some colors. I don't see them the same way you do.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you can say this is brown and say, no, this is orange. But I'm sorry, my orange is my reality. No matter what you say, no matter what you tell me, and you could put a Pantene table, colored Pantene table with number and say, show me the number is a different one. I say, yep, still I see a different color. So my perception is what it is. So perception is one's reality, no matter what other people will tell you. Like often, have you never heard people say like, and this is about not necessarily perception, but is an example of how that works. When people say, I'm cold, and people say, come on, you cannot be cold.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, if I'm cold, I'm cold, right? No matter what you say, no matter you tell me how warm it is,
Mhm.
if I'm cold, period. That's it. So perception is like that. If I perceive you being aggressive towards me, I perceive you being aggressive, and that's the way I feel. Now, you will diffuse and change my perception with information, with a change of tone, with a change of demeanor, so you can affect my perception. You can manage, and then we get into our topic, manage the perception. That's where, as a coach, I've worked with CEOs, and for instance, sports people have a major issue with perception management. I remember, I need to be careful of some of the names we should not mention, but he is many times right. He's been a champion. Otherwise, you will figure out who I'm talking about. And I remember one of his best friends, also a driver, complaining about certain things, and I showed him the perception that he was creating of himself, complaining all the time about certain things, about certain parts of the car, what have you. And all of a sudden, he went like, wow, I never seen myself from the other side, from the receiving end, from the other side of the screen. I'm there on TV doing interviews and said, well, let's watch this together. Let's analyze it. What do you think? And that was it was a revealing experience for him where he realized that the perception he was creating was not at all what he wanted. So he came across as a crybaby, complaining, bitching, moaning, instead of being more assertive like he thought he was. So all of a sudden his perception changed dramatically of himself, and he could work on managing the perception he was creating.
So would you say then that perception management is how we influence another person of how they experience or see us?
In many ways, yes. And that's where there is a connotation saying, well, but that's manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be manipulation, and manipulation is not necessarily bad, although it has this bad connotation. The word manipulation is automatically associated with negative experiences and negative intentions. And what is important is the intention and how things are done. You can manipulate people to take action. If you scream in a place, fire, people will run. Now, if you do it for fun and people get hurt, that's criminal, right? If you do it to save lives, it's an amazing, great thing you did. So it all depends how things are applied for them to be good and to be bad, to be right, to be wrong. And yes, there's a certain element of, often there's a certain element of manipulation in perception management, definitely.
How then can we manage perception in a good way? Because you did talk about that
Well, it should be always managed only in a good way, by definition. I've had customers that wanted to manage perceptions in a way that, let's use an example, corporate example. You have a company that wants an image of itself, because perception management touches on corporate culture, corporate values, in image management, into cultural management, into the market perception of a company, of a brand, branding management. All of those touch on perception management. Or perception management touches them all. And I remember distinctly, certainly one particular client, a large corporation, where they were very interested in perception management, but they wanted to create a perception that was not in line with the reality. So they knew that their service was not what they pretended to be. They knew certain things were not in line with what they were saying. So they wanted to create an image, a perception that was different than the reality. And we didn't play along. We didn't work with them. We declined. I mean, they were very upset, and I was very upset because it was been an amazing project. But it's the wrong purpose. The purpose is to lead people astray, believing something which is not true. And that is not the way perception management works.
Can you
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you cite can you cite an example wherein perception management was used in a good way, a company?
Let me use an example, which is a beautiful example from Japan, which I'm not sure is good or bad, right? Because the jury's out and the truth will never be known.
Okay.
I think it was Sony or JVC, one of the two large electronic companies. This company produces, things that none of you know, which are called videotape recorders, video cassette players, VCRs. So this company delivered a video cassette recorder, because they're big like this. I have a few. I have two in my basement. I cannot throw them away, like the camera up there, which is a huge camera. And they claimed they delivered a device which had a quality problem. They only discovered that after it was delivered. They noticed in their quality management process that that one should have gone to not to be delivered and to be reworked or scrapped or whatever it was, and it was delivered. So they figure out immediately who the customer was, where the customer was, and they took a device and went to the customer's home and delivered and exchanged the device. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a story that goes around. I don't know if a story was invented or is really true. Mm-hmm. And if it's true, I'm not sure. I don't know if the device was really defective or not. And if it was defective, I don't know if it was done on purpose. Okay, so there are so many variables that could have made that perception management result into a very manipulative exercise to show their market, this is how committed we are to quality and service. So, but they used it for some time, and it went around the speakers. I was a public speaker at the time on quality and productivity, mainly in quality management, Kaizen, and it made the circle. Everybody heard it, but nobody could really vouch for that being true or not. So that's fascinating. That's a good example of perception management.
Well, you said it was good though, but from a customer's perspective, if I ever found out that that was fake,
Oh, that would be devastating. That would be devastating. That would blow you out of the water. That would be that would be terrible. Yeah, that would be bad.
particularly as well, if I was the team that was to, well, it feels like a marketing ploy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but on the other hand, based on the Japanese culture, it was perceived as being true because they don't expect a Japanese company to do that. That's a culture, right? I mean, there has been problems in Japan similar to other places in the world, but less frequent, and sometimes maybe they don't become public. I don't know.
But the perception management is a very, very tricky. So
Oh, it's fascinating. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
it is
Because you
very
can do achieve a lot of things with perception management. Perception management is at the pinnacle of a foundation of many skills that you need to be good at perception management. It's not like a vaccine. It's not like, okay, I take a perception management course and I'm good at it.
yeah,
That
right.
won't work.
Yeah,
That won't
like for
work.
example, like um perception management at scale. Like for example, someone's running for office, right? They have a whole team behind that candidate building what the perception of people about this person. Would
I
you
don't
say
think you
that?
want to go there.
Would you say then that perception can be equated to reputation?
In this case, is manipulative reputation. Yeah, you manipulate the opinion of people using someone's reputation, true or fake. And you can fake a reputation, you can fake things.
Mhm.
And we've been, I mean, bombarded in the last few years with examples of fake information and people pretending things which are not true or pretending things which are blatant lies and they defend them. But this is a complete different. I mean, we don't want to go there.
It's,
But
it's
in management, you have the situation, but we can make parallels to management where you have a CEO, which I have worked with, examples of the situation where a CEO will defend the indefensible. And the reason they do it is because they get exposed. And some people don't have that, are not humble enough to recognize their own mistake, and they find that they need to double down on a lie to maintain a perception.
Mhm.
And that is twice as bad as admitting once and fixing it and moving forward, or just moving away, whatever it is that their company or their own moral standards call for. But the bottom line is that that kind of perception management is the bad side of it that you addressed at the beginning of our conversation. That's the negative side of manipulation. You manipulate public opinion, or in this case, the opinion of your shareholders, of your board of directors, of your senior management team, with information, with facts, with statements which are where you're going sparingly, you're going about very sparingly with the truth, to put it mildly, to be diplomatic about how to express it, that they're lying.
All right, so that is what it looks like from a large scale perspective. Like you do perception management for someone who's running office, or you do perception management for companies. Those absolutely involve a whole team behind that person or behind that company. And it's usually seen when it comes to, large entities like that. But can perception management also be implemented on an individual level? Like, for example, like I work with a team, I'm a manager of this team. Can I manage their perception of me, or is it important to even manage my
Oh,
perception?
absolutely essential. It starts from the top, because what I have to mention, it starts with the CEO being the role model, being the example for the organization. And if you don't have honest perception management from the very top, you're not going to be able to do it at the bottom of the organization. It's going to be always this political, and it's interesting, I say political because politics and perception management are where manipulation is very, very clear to be recognized.
If if that's the
So
case, though, then but influencing the CEO's perception management is something that's out of my reach. I'm just compared to him, I'm probably going to be a rank and file. How then can I manage people's
either it's in
perception?
the Well, either, you have a culture of honesty and openness, or you don't. And if you don't, it's going to be very hard to do, period. I mean, maybe at some level, minor, small level within your department, your function, you'll be able to manage perceptions in some way, but you're not going to have a major breakthrough because it's not in the culture, it's not in the values of the company. It has to be in the values of the company. The company is, the organization is honest and is open, is humble, and will deal with reality as is perceived by its players. The problem when we are associated with politics is different, and I think we should not, because my experience dealing with people which have a political agenda, and I'm talking about at top level management, very often the border between business and politics and public perception are very blurred. A CEO of a large company has roles to play in society, is invited to events and it's awards, and there is donations. There is a number of politically touchy situations where it's no longer perception management in business, which is what we do. And that's where I step back and I don't want to get involved, because that's where manipulation comes into bear a lot more. And I'm not an advocate of that, and I don't support that. And that's not where our strength is, and it's not where we want to be active. So going back to the point of perception management lower within the organization, if in the structure managers have the example role models from above percolating down that we have to be open, we have to be humble, we need to learn to manage perceptions in a constructive, positive way, that means that for perception management being here at the top, there has to be a number of skills which are the foundation to be able to do perception management properly. These skills are a number of them, and they're equally important. And without those, perception management will be impossible. If you don't know how to communicate, if you don't know how to set expectations and manage expectations properly, if giving, requesting, accepting, managing feedback is not a very strong skill, perception management will simply not work. The point I'm making is perception management is based on all these skills
together,
functioning and working and interacting with each other. So that's why it's important that it percolates from the top down, and that the role models show the next level how it's working.
I do understand that in order to manage perceptions effectively, you do need the whole set of those skills, and you can't do it alone. I do understand with what you're saying, that it has to trickle down, because feedback is vital. And it's one of the skills that's vital for perception management. So with no one telling you, that no one giving you effective feedback, you won't be able to handle or manage people's perception of you. Like, for example, the client you were talking about earlier, the driver, the professional driver in a certain category that is very popular around the world. He thought he was coming off as assertive, but from a third person's perspective, he wasn't. He came off as whiny. So without effective feedback, you won't be able to manage perception or otherwise.
Correct.
So I do understand that part, that all of these have to work together. But in the interest of self-improvement, like, I'm a huge fan of, like, if I can't change the system, change myself for the better, and influence those around me better. So how then do I manage people's perception, pardon me, from my individual capacity?
If you master the skills, you're going to have no problem at all establishing. First of all, there's a number of things you need to establish. First of all, you need to establish what is the perception I want to create of me, assuming the perception matches reality, right? If you want to pretend to be Miss Nice Girl, Miss Nice Lady, and then you are aggressive and brutal with people, then it's going to be very hard to do, and it's a dishonest attempt to manipulate the reality. That's not perception management, right? Perception management is, here is the way I perceive myself, and I hope I'm being perceived the same way by others, and I want to match my desired the perception of myself with the real perception other people have of me. And let's remember that you could have 5 people, you want their perception, know how they perceive you. You might have 5 different definitions of you. They
Yeah.
might perceive you in 5 different ways, because we are conditioned by prior experience to perceive and feel and react to things.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
you, as a young person, were, let's say, you were bitten by a dog, a black dog, you unconsciously will be scared of black dogs. And you will perceive black dogs as aggressive, even if they're not, because you are associating with prior experience that black dogs are dangerous because they bit you once. You may have 5 different people with 5 different perceptions of how you operate, or how you
Mm.
communicate, of your demeanor, of how you control your emotions, of how you communicate and delegate assignments, on how you follow up,
Yeah.
on your mindset, or how many times in our team, people think I'm mad at somebody, and I'm not mad. I'm just excited, and I raise my voice, but I'm not raising my voice because I'm screaming at someone. It's because I'm getting excited. And people, it's happened to me. Say, "Why are you screaming at me?" I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not screaming at you. I'm just excited." It's like, "Oh well, I was getting scared because I thought you were screaming at me." Well, no, I'm not. So I did not manage the perception properly. Now, these exchanges and interactions are what create and nurture and nourish a perception.
Mm.
Now, what you're addressing is how you formally do that. And I think it's very important to know how to formally address that and say, hey, here's the way I would like to be perceived. Now, this is for myself. I don't tell people. But here are the things I would like to know how you perceive me, about my communication, about my management style, about my demeanor in the morning, and how I run meetings. And you can mix now personal, emotional, and technical aspects of your management activity, management responsibility, to get a feedback, get input back as of how you're being perceived. And then you need to decide, does it match what you want it to be, or it doesn't? And then you need to take action to adjust it.
Mm.
Because
That's
sometimes you need to adjust your behavior, right? Because if you perceive me, you and I had it when we started working together, that you perceive me in a certain way, and I thought, well, that's not the way I perceive myself. So we needed to start elaborating on it to define, is it that I can modify the way you perceive me by showing you other parts of the way I manage? Or did I have to change the way I managed so I would be perceived the way I want to be perceived? Because not always the one or the other. It can be both, or it can be either one. And that is what makes perception management fascinating. And it makes humble openness an absolute mandatory condition for it to work.
so it's about aligning your desired image with your actions and it also has to be anchored somewhat in reality because then manipulation comes in. I could be like in reality, I could be the worst person in the world outside the office, but in office I'll be acting like someone who's the kindest person in the world, very attentive to everyone's need, never raising my voice. That's quite scary to think of. But would you categorize that as perception management?
It is, because it is actually a reality. As scary as it may sound, is a reality. Now you're addressing another very important topic that we train executives on, which is IR, identity role. Your identity might be that you're an aggressive person, that you are pushy, you are unpleasant, you are short, you're short-tempered. It sounds me some years back, terrible. To the point that the perception of me is so fearful that people will not even dare giving you feedback because they're terrified of your reaction to the feedback.
Yeah.
I could now sidetrack on a flight. I was sitting next to a young man wearing a suit and a tie. It was the same uniform I used to wear when I was running business coaching with Mark. And we always wear our uniform, our suit and white shirt and a tie. And I asked him, I said, are you a consultant? I said, yeah, how do you know? I said, just, you look like one, and I've been there before. Oh, yeah. And I'm going to make a very short story. And I started saying about who I was, and he went pale in his face and said, "Are you the one?" I said, "What do you mean?" So he had heard stories about me, which were horrible stories about, I mean, almost me eating babies. I mean, horrible. And he thought I was a monster, right? Because the stories had grown over time, and the perception and the understanding was created of me as a leader in another company in the consulting industry. That I was horrible. I probably was horrible. Okay, I have been horrible, and I'm not proud of that. And I have improved, and I continue to work on myself. But it's the change, how perceptions are, and this image wasn't used. The word image.
Mm.
This image was created of me being something. Maybe I was to some extent, but it was embellished, and it was, somebody found a hair and they make several wigs out of that hair. Anyway, yes, it is scary, but it is identity role. So you can have this person which is very aggressive, very authoritarian, very, I would say maybe mean at home, and yet when they they get into a role and they are maybe a doctor, all of a sudden their demeanor will change, their attitude will change, the way they display, the way their behavior, the way they greet and smile at people, the way they listen to people is completely different.
Mm.
They will not behave that way at home, which is their identity. They will behave that way when they're in R, which means enroll when they're doctors. So yes, the answer to your question is yes.
That was a very helpful answer then, because then that helped further define the line between being manipulative and perception management.
Absolutely. These are not being manipulative. They just
Yeah,
change the R in role. And you can
because
actually, you have different roles. You have a role as a parent, you have a role as a wife and husband, you have a role as a teacher, as an officer in the army, you can have a role as a surgeon.
yeah,
You have a role as a car driver when you're in traffic. That's a different role.
yeah.
Maybe you're being very, very nice always, and you get into traffic, you become into, somebody else.
From what you said earlier, it seems that being intentional about the image you project is a vital part of leadership.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm very conscious about, for instance, we have a revolving change our feedback meetings regularly, one-on-one. I'm extremely conscious about, first of all, letting the person I'm having an interview with being first. The person doesn't get affected by what I'm going to say and how they feel free to share their perception of things, their understanding, their feelings. Number two, I will not question ever what people say or feel. I will ask questions which are clarifying questions to get more information for me to understand. Do I need to do something? Do I need to change something? Is something not right? Or what is good that I can do more of? I have one of the calls lately, the person said, the only thing I'd like to know is, can we have these calls more often? Yeah, sure, absolutely. If it gives you and gives us and is helpful, yes. Another feedback I had is, well, I appreciate the fact that despite all the stress we have, we never postpone the calls. We still have them, despite all the stress and all the amount of work we have. So that we lift the importance of them to the point that people recognize that they are important. So yes, the answer to your question is definitely a very clear yes, which is a major obstacle to sometimes get
Yeah,
CEOs to understand that.
yeah, yeah. I think that's very important. This has been a really, really rich discussion, and there will be many, many more topics about perception management. But it is now time to transition into one of my favorite parts of the podcast,
The
which is
questions.
reading real stories and challenges that face people today and give our advice about them. Well, no one asked, but we're going to give them anyway. All right. So I have 3 questions for us here today. And the first one says, I hate being perceived at work and in the office. So I have a graduate assistant job where I'm an assistant to my boss in hospital. It's a lot of office work. I've worked in this office before, but I love my job too much and I get to be by myself 80% of the time and do fun office duties. But I absolutely hate thinking about what my coworkers think of me. Sending emails is so scary to me that I always think about how they're going to think of me when they read it. Am I being too snarky? Am I being extra? Do I sound stupid? What is it I'm going to do even. So I tend to overanalyze how I say everything and how I do things for the team. And this is completely new to me and confusing. I'm even considering dropping out of grad school because I hate being perceived in group settings and how good or bad of a team player I am, and if I'm difficult to work with or not, or if I'm too quiet. Am I confident? So many things I think about. I know I don't need to, and I'm just overthinking. Anyone, what are your thoughts? That
Oh
was
my
a
God.
lot.
How many hours do we have? I
You
mean,
have 5 minutes. Just,
that's a mouthful.
yeah,
First of all, no, yeah, you're overthinking, maybe, but it doesn't matter. I don't believe in overthinking. I don't believe in cutting corners. Say, okay, let's not overthink and let's do that without thinking further. No, I cannot associate myself with that. What I hear is this person works in a lot of isolation and is lacking the bridge, what I call the feedback bridge. And the feedback bridge also requires expectations, management expertise. So my advice to this person would be pick one person you feel relatively comfortable, agree that this person is going to help you unravel the dilemma of what is expected of me, what do I expect of you, that we can agree on mutual expectations. And in the expectations, I will include that we're going to learn from each other to give each other feedback. So I start with expectations, build in the feedback exchange as a expectation, and will, with this one person, achieve what I want to do globally, but with one person. So, summarizing, we agree that what I expect from you, I expect that if one of my emails are too harsh,
yeah.
you will send me a message. We agree that maybe I can send you a draft and you give me feedback before I send it. You give me your opinion about the wording I'm using, the tone, because I feel uncomfortable with writing because people cannot hear me, and speaking is much more easier sometimes, depending on the people, than writing. When I write emails and I find the tone and I'm not totally in control of my tone, I keep it as draft. I look at it the other day, and 9 out of 10 times I go like, oh my God, I cannot send this out this way. So I work on it, and then I save it again because maybe the emotions crept into me again. So this person could do this with somebody that they have had this expectations agreement to get feedback on a draft. How does it get to you? How do you feel the tone is? Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it too aggressive? Is it too paternalistic? Any aspect that may bother you. Now, then you, as I made it part of expectations, feedback, we're going to learn to give each other feedback. And I hopefully will have in this person, will receive the feedback I need in terms of, yeah, your tone is right or your tone is not right, or no, you sound scared, you sound too aggressive, you sound negative. And once I have done this, and this should not be a long exercise, this should take a few days with somebody, bring other people into the process, do the same thing with another one person, three persons. And then you can do it globally with your team, but that will establish this bridge and break that impasse that I don't know. Then you will know. And that is the key. The uncertainty, I think, is what is bothering this person the most, and doesn't know how to overcome the uncertainty, and is scared of what we're gonna see when we blow away the uncertainty.
I love that you said that because this person said that I hate the idea of a group setting. So it could be possible that they have social anxiety as well. So starting
Sure.
choosing one person that they feel relatively comfortable with is a very, very good and practical advice. So that was absolutely great. Right. Next
I hope
question.
it helps.
Oh, uh, whoever you are, that's you. Comment down below.
Good, good luck. Yes.
Good luck. Okay, so the next question goes, does anyone else struggle with being perceived as rude at work? Well, I know I have. You guys are witness to it. So the person asks, I've had this problem at work where my supervisors and I often get into what they call arguments. but I don't interpret this as such because in my mind, we are just having a conversation about work. For example, one time she asked me why this wasn't done and this wasn't done, and I said that I don't know the reason. And I guess that's a rude thing to say because then she criticized me for not already knowing how to do certain tasks, to which I replied, I was never told these tasks belong to what I should be doing. And then she said it was my responsibility to inform myself about things that I don't know how to do yet. And then I replied with, in order to know how to do something, I need to know I should be doing the same thing. And I don't know, it just keeps going on like that. And she called me argumentative. Am I the problem here? I don't see how what I said is argumentative or rude. I just explained to her why I didn't do something.
Wow. No, I don't think this person is rude. Although we lack one
I
element, which
I
we
would,
lack an element of the tone. Yeah, you would
yeah,
what?
yeah, right. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, she sounds sarcastic if I was her manager.
No, I don't. I don't think so because we are missing one component, key components. One is that the person criticizing and putting the person down is the superior, is the boss. Here, the subordinate responding, um, and even responding in a way which I think is very wise, which is with questions or suggestion like, "Well, I didn't know this was my responsibility."
Yeah,
And if I'm told, well, I need to guess and read somebody's mind to find out what's my responsibility, I think it's a bit far-fetched.
yeah.
No, I don't think this person is. I think this person should take some management courses and take the job of her boss or his boss. I mean, no.
She's not the problem.
Obviously, expectations have not been clearly set. The assignments are. I mean, again, if a job is not properly done or not done at all, it's not for the subordinate to know, it's for the superior to know. Because if there is a proper management system,
Hmm?
so you have plan activities and actual activities, you have variances in the performance, variances in the quality, and then you have explanations for the variances and you have corrective actions to fix them. That's not the operator's, the staff's job. That is the management job. So, no, I don't think that I don't have a great piece of advice I could give or share with this person in her frustration, other than you need a better boss, really. Sorry to say, I
To
think the
whoever
boss
asked, yeah.
is not well trained.
To whoever who asked this question, the answer is no, you're not the problem.
No, I don't think you are. No,
You're
I
asking
don't
the
think you're the
right
problem.
questions. You're answering what was asked of you. Get a better boss. That's what.
Yeah, or this boss needs to be trained on feedback and take this feedback in a constructive, because this person is reacting negative to the feedback and the
Yeah.
response it's getting from the subordinate. So I don't think there's anything aggressive or wrong in saying, well, I didn't know this was part of my job. If I didn't know, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So when I say I don't know, which part of I don't know you don't understand? If I don't know, I just don't know. And some people have a hard time accepting that you don't know something. Well, okay, then if you don't accept that I don't know, that's your problem, not my problem, right?
Absolutely. All right. Last question. This person asks, how to not be emotionally affected by my boss's perception of me. I've been at my job for almost 8 months now, and I'm feeling increasingly burnt out, largely due to my boss's toxicity. Initially, I admired her, and I think because of that, I place a great deal of my self-worth on her perception of me. To her credit, she's great at acknowledging jobs well done and will compliment you on it. However, when I mess things up, something doesn't meet her standards, she can be really sharp with her words. Her criticism has become sharper over time. For instance, she once said, "You don't belong here," when I made a mistake. Recently, she even blamed me for a small error because I was working from home, accusing me of chillaxing. So chillaxing is a combined word of chilling and relaxing instead of working diligently. I personally disagree. I put in the same effort regardless of my location. Her words are affecting my self-esteem and I'm struggling to cope. I enjoy my job, the company, and my colleagues, but my boss is causing me undue stress. Can you offer any advice on handling this emotionally?
That's a mouthful. That's a difficult one.
Yeah.
I've seen that the question we're having is consistently subordinates that suffer under poor management skills of their
Mm.
superiors, and that's very, very damning and very difficult. I have situations like this with many clients, and the first thing, and it's very difficult for a subordinate to do, and I mean, I'm not going to pretend this is easy to manage. It is not, especially when it's got to the point after 8 months, the person is already burned out, and that's pretty bad, pretty bad. After 8 months, a person should start feeling comfortable and feeling the sense of growth and motivation and inspiration, and not the opposite. So this is very, very difficult. Like I always say, the fish thinks from the head. We always have to look up and not look down when we look for the cause of problems and the solutions for problems. This manageress has the ability to give feedback on technical accomplishments, but when it comes down to the person, it's terrible. And when you hear things you don't belong here, maybe you should take them literally and, draw the consequence from it, because unless you have the strength to stand up and coach your boss, which is one thing which is very hard to do, very hard to do. Unless you have a boss that is extremely open and is extremely humble, can be humble and accept own shortcomings, it's going to be very hard. And I know bosses like that, and there are bosses which I have coached over years and have become extremely good at that. It doesn't mean you're like that all the time. Sometimes you are and sometimes you're not, depending on the need. If you're in a crisis, you need to manage the crisis, you call the shots, you make decisions, and you have no time for any of that. But most of the time you do have the bandwidth, the time, the patience, the energy to cope with it and use it as a foundation for growth for yourself and for your subordinates, your peers. In this context, if it's affecting your self-esteem, one needs to ask oneself the question, is this worth it? Because if I'm going to get destroyed in the process and my self-confidence is going to be affected,
Yeah.
and I'm going to end up burned out, even though I like the job and I like the company, but I cannot work with this person. Either you have somebody that you can confide in and ask for support internally, that somebody will give feedback to this manageress and teach her, help her grow. There is not much I can say, unfortunately. I feel very unhappy about that because I would have liked to give a better insight. But the hierarchy problem is not to be underestimated. When you have a boss that is perceived and seems to behave in the way this person does, and she's getting to the point where the subordinate is annihilated, basically, performance is going to continue to drop. And then the self-fulfilling prophecy is going to come to bear that whatever I do is wrong, and it will be wrong, and there's not going to be no happy end. So I would only say, take control of your life. Don't let other people run your life. Take control of your life.
Wow. Okay. That's really helpful advice. Another thing I was trying to think of was like, do they have the courage to actually seek help from someone higher than their boss, their direct manager? That will be something to try, but it's quite
Definitely.
difficult. But it's quite difficult because you're like tattletale.
No, it's not difficult. It's actually, it's a good point you're raising. It's a good point you're raising. You're a good coach. That was a very good point. Actually, you want to make up your mind on what you want, but it's equally important to make up your mind on what you do not want. It's equally important. And sometimes what you do not want is more important, because sometimes we don't know exactly what we want. We don't know where this road is taking us. We don't know what we're going to be finding and facing, but we know what we had behind us. We know the experience. We know what we do not want. So focusing on what we do not want is sometimes the key for going forward. In this context, following on what you said, which I thought was extremely valuable and on point, this manager, I guess, is a lady with a lady manager she reports to. She could very clearly decide, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. Over, done.
Mm.
That will give her the strength, the energy to say, okay, what have I got left to lose? Nothing, because either this is going to change or I'm going to go. So she made up her mind. If she has the strength of making up her mind, then there are two ways that she can approach this. One is the way you said, go above her and say, listen, I'm ready to quit. I'm ready to resign. I'm ready to go today if need be, but I cannot work with this person anymore because X, Y, Z. That's one way to do it. There's another way to do it, which can be equally effective, and it's maybe for self-development, not bad at all, is confronting this manager and saying, I need a call with you, I need a meeting with you, a feedback meeting, and there's a few things I want to share with you if you're willing to listen to me without interrupting me and without aggressing me. Are you willing, yes or no? Chances are the person says yes, and when the session starts, the person will disrespect and not respect that agreement, and this person needs to be strong and say, I'm sorry, you were going to listen to me, you're not listening to me. Will you? You will not, otherwise we just stop the call. The manager will be totally shocked by this self-confidence and the assertiveness of the subordinate calling the shots and setting the boundaries. And setting boundaries is so important. We seldom talk about setting boundaries, and setting boundaries is one of the foundations of interrelations and management. Those boundaries are so important. She will set, the boundaries are connected to the feedback, connect to expectations, but expectations are often boundaries. Boundaries are included in expectations very often, or should be. And she should say, listen, if you and I don't get to a solution of this, I just want you to know that I will go to so-and-so above her, and I will make my point, and this is going to be resolved one way or the other. And if it means that you want to fire me, you do that. I have no problem with that. But this is not going to continue.
Mm.
But this takes a lot of courage, a lot of self-confidence, a lot of determination. But that is important because that will give this person the self-respect, the self-appreciation. And I think it's going to be one of the springboards into growth.
Mm.
I think it's going to be one of the things that said, well, you put in the CV, yeah, I worked here for a year and I quit. And I quit because, and explain the situation, because you want to work with companies and for managers that appreciate that kind of self-confidence, of determination, of wisdom and courage. And if they don't and don't want that, don't go work there.
Mm. Yeah, that's very
So your
practical.
point was very, very good. Thank you for that.
Glad I can help. That is actually very rich. Yeah, that's also, those are really, really good advice and really good inputs. You did point it out, like most of those questions were people suffering under managers, and it's really difficult nowadays to find good managers, good leaders around you. So,
Is it really? Why is that?
it actually is because a lot of people are highly influenced by cookie cutter version of what a manager is. A lot of people are, as far as I've experienced, a lot of people are more concerned with performing in an organization, less about the people working there. Company culture of people care is not present. So things like that, like goals, targets. If you don't join this outside of work office, you're not dedicated to your work at all. So yeah,
Yeah, I was reading a report on that.
Yeah.
No, you're not expected to work on weekends, but I will make a note of it.
Yeah, right. There's like, it's
Okay,
gonna affect your
interesting.
performance or your promotion or whatever. There's even a joke going around that they will promote you, but don't accept getting promoted because it's just more
It's a
responsibility.
trap. It's a trap.
It's a
It's a
trap.
trap.
Get out of there. So that's what they're saying.
It's like growing up is a trap.
Oh my gosh. We can't stop it though.
Oh yeah, we can. We boys can.
Oh,
That's why we are much
biologically.
slower than you ladies.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but going back to what you were saying in terms of management, I think there is, and it's generational. It's to have a generational understanding of it is very, very important because I work with millennials, I work with Gen Zs, I work with baby boomers, and I work with all generations. And it's very interesting the characteristics of some of them. And the younger they get, the more they are. I mean, my daughters are millennials.
Mm,
You're a millennial.
mm,
They were the transition between high tech and no tech.
yeah.
They grew up with maybe a what was it called, the Pac-Man, and the small devices that you could switch off and put them away. But we're playing outside and running on the roller skates and playing softball and playing football, European football, soccer. When young people today, the younger generations, don't do any of that, and they have no relationship to that. This electronics is impersonal. Like we do a revolving change, we don't do business on WhatsApp. We want to hear the voice, we want the tone. And even email is not ideal, but email is better than a WhatsApp because you can find it, you can archive it, you can respond, you have the story, which in WhatsApp you can't do. And even we have our regular meetings face to face because nothing replaces seeing each other, hearing the tone of the voice, hearing the demeanor we're in. Where you can ask me, are you upset with me? We're like, you have asked me. I said, no, I'm upset with the situation, I'm upsetting with the problem that we are having, or a supplier has nothing to do with you, but it reflects on the way I'm talking to you. But then not to take it personal, has nothing to do with you. And it helps me tone down because I don't realize how I'm coming across. I'm not perceiving myself, I'm not hearing myself. So I think the generational part, which is one of the books I had that working on with another, actually her name is Eileen also, but she's in the UK. And we need to pick it up again because it's amazing the impact the different generations have on each other, how they work, and how difficult it is to follow. I can understand easily as a baby boomer, a millennial, and I can understand a Gen Z, but a Gen Z cannot understand a baby boomer. It's a different world, completely different world. I am a real true dinosaur for them, and they just cannot relate to them. And that is going to become a major problem in business management. It's becoming a problem, a growing problem. But that's for another
That's for
podcast some
another
other time.
podcast. Yes. That is for another podcast. And that is our cue to actually end our discussion right here. But before we go, from what we discussed here today, Jorge, what is one thing we could all start doing to manage our perception of ourselves, either in business or on an individual level? Just one thing to start with.
Simple. Look at the mirror. Very
Ooh.
simple. Look at the mirror and talk to the mirror and hear the tone and see your nonverbals. See the way you perceive yourself first and say, is this the way I want others to perceive me?
Mm.
It's very simple. It may
Yeah.
sound crazy.
Yeah.
You may not want to do it when people are watching because people think you're maybe going ape shit. You're going, I'm sorry, ape something. You're
Yeah.
going nuts. But it helps a lot. I mean, it's helped me a lot.
Mm.
One last point. Remember, my daughter, my youngest one, she probably was between 4 and 6 years old. One day, she says to me, "Daddy, why do you always look like this?" Do I look like that? I say, "Yeah, you do." And it was such a mind-blowing situation where none of my people or our team had the courage to tell me the nonverbals I was showing and displaying in this 4 or 5 year old, because she is not scared of me and she's my daughter, and when I'm in my role as dad, I'm different than I'm in business, obviously, showed me that my nonverbals were terrible.
Yeah.
And that's where I start doing what I call the mirror exercise and the mirror talks. I mean, I have some clients which have dramatically changed the way they manage by the mirror conversations with oneself and asking oneself questions and giving oneself the answer and listening to the tone and listening how irritated they get. It can change a lot of things.
Well, that's very, very interesting to say. Like looking in the mirror, you did say it earlier. You need to establish what you want and how you want to be perceived first, because that's where you start.
And what you don't want. I don't want to be perceived as
Yeah,
aggressive. I
that's
don't
true.
want to be perceived as negative.
Mm.
Okay, so How do I discard that? What do I change? Well,
Mm.
how about smiling from time to time?
Mm.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
smile. But let's make it a real smile, not a fake smile, right?
Yeah.
We'll
So,
smile with our eyes and our mouth also, our face. But
yeah.
that means we need to change our mindset. We need to feel positive.
Mm.
There is a number of things that come after, but it all starts with the visual, right? It's the same as relationships. You like somebody, if you see somebody and you feel attracted to this physical appearance of somebody, you connect with them, and then things change because then you see the intellect, you see the voice, you see the demeanor, and then maybe you like them more, you like them less. But that's besides the point. The point is that starts by discarding what you don't want. I don't want to be perceived this way. So what do I do? And now you start working on changing things.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good practical advice. To
I would
our,
like to hear what our audience thinks about all
yeah,
this.
sorry. That's what I was about to say. You took the words right
So
out of my mouth, Jorge. To our listeners and viewers out there, we're big on collaboration and interactive discussion here at Revolving Change. So we would love to hear your thoughts about the matter. In the comments section below, let us know what is one thing that you can apply immediately from this episode. Our team will be there reading your answers. So we can't wait to see what you have to say.
I also
And
would like to hear if there is other topics that they feel that connects to what we discussed today that they would like to know more about.
yes,
I
exactly.
also took the words out of your mouth again.
So exactly. You can also reach us through our social media channels. Just type in revolving change or search for our handle, which is at revolving change _. You'll know it's us just by looking at our logo and our content. You can also email us at connect@revolvingchange.com. And so once again, this has been Jorge and Joanna from the Revolving Change team, and we'll like to see you on our next episode. Bye.
Dinosaurs have 3 fingers.
Bye.
Bye bye.